Hey everyone, welcome. Thank you so much for coming to Welcome to the Neighborhood Association. Now what? Essentials that every neighborhood association board member should know. My name is Nancy Champlin, and I'm the executive director at Southeast Uplift, the District 3 Coalition. I also spent 4 years working on the board as a volunteer on the board of the Selwood Moreland Improvement League, which is the neighborhood association in the Selwood Moreland community. So we're really pleased to have you here today. This webinar is being recorded, so we will get it uploaded to our YouTube channel within the next few days and make sure that you all have a copy of that as well as the slides. At the end of this slide deck, there's links to a few resources. We will also put them in the chat during this presentation, so you can access them right away if you like. Tonight's event is going to cover four core things. The first is an overview of the neighborhood program with the City of Portland, your legal duties, your roles and responsibilities as a board member of a neighborhood association, and some general best practices for neighborhood association board. So we're going to kind of fly at the 30,000 foot level. And my trusty co-pilot, Diane O'Day, is going to be facilitating your questions in the Q&A. Hold on, I wanna so if you have questions throughout, feel free to put them in the chat. If it's something that Diane can answer quickly, she'll just answer that. But we will have ample time. This is a 90-minute webinar, so we'll have plenty of time for your questions. We will revisit them at the end. And so if as we go along, if you have a question, feel free to throw it in there. Let's go ahead and get started. And Diane is also she's the fiscal sponsorship program manager at Southeast Uplift. So she works with not just the neighborhood associations within District 3, but over a dozen other community-based organizations that we support. So what is the neighborhood program? So the neighborhood program, it's a framework for all Portlanders to participate in the civic affairs and improve the livability and character of their neighborhoods and the city. The neighborhood program was started in 1974. It was started at a time that emerged when so many things were happening within Portland, and was in District 1 wasn't actually even annexed into the east of 82nd wasn't annexed into the city of Portland until the 80s and 90s. But in District 2, which is predominantly Northeast Portland and North Portland, there was a lot of issues happening prior to the establishment of this program, such as redlining and displacement of the Black community there. In District 3, neighborhoods all along Powell Boulevard rallied and stopped the city and the state from putting the Mount Hood Freeway, which would have bisected Southeast Portland. And in District 4 in Southwest Portland, the urban renewal funding led to displacement of the Jewish and Japanese communities. So eventually, by around 1974, the city realized that they really needed a way for Portlanders to connect and help inform the city around its decision making, particularly around things like land use, transportation, the on the ground things in our neighborhoods that really help to improve livability for our communities. The neighborhood program is embedded in city code. It's code 3.96. We will share a link at the end, which kind of outlines the role of the city in the neighborhood program. It outlines the role of neighborhood associations and what they do, and also the role of district coalitions, which there are four. So the neighborhood program is managed by the Office of Community and Civic Life, or as we call it for short, Civic Life. And it falls under a set of rules called the standards the ONI standards. The Office of Community and Civic Life used to be called the Office of Neighborhood Involvement. And so now we have a framework called the standards that explain what neighborhoods are responsible for doing, the rules by which they operate. Same with district coalitions and business districts, all with good governance practices to make sure that meetings are open, they're inclusive, and your activities are transparent for the public. Um, Neighborhood associations specifically are not arms of the city, so we're independent, and we'll get to this in just a second. And then in this third box here is there's 4 district coalitions, which you all probably remember as the city has undergone its new districting process for having a city council that is elected by district. These are the 4 district coalition offices. There used to be 7, there are now 4, and there are 94 officially recognized by the city neighborhood associations. So what are neighborhood associations? So we're gonna break down this kind of wonky description, but it's an autonomous organization formed by people for the purpose of considering and acting on issues affecting the livability and the quality of their neighborhood, formally recognized by the city and subject to administrative rules. So just to unpack that, autonomous organization means that as organizations, you're registered with the Secretary of State's office with the state. The business is a nonprofit business, and that is very distinctly separate. You are not an arm of the city. So you are an autonomous nonprofit organization, not a not a government entity. District coalitions are also not government entities. We are all nonprofits as well. Neighborhood associations are formally recognized by the city. Again, back to that city code, neighborhood associations and district coalitions are embedded in city code and are managed by the Office of Community and Civic Life. And the administrative rules, which ensures that things stay open and inclusive and transparent, are the ONI standards, the Office of Neighborhood Involvement Standards, and we'll unpack them a little bit in a minute. So here's some of the things that neighborhood associations do. You build community, you foster a sense of belonging with your neighbors, you develop leaders, you inform and connect your neighbors to decision makers. That could be at the city level, could sometimes be at the state level, sometimes it's with the county or other decision-making, other agencies. Group of people working to improve your neighborhood and the city, and working in coalition with others. Some neighborhoods team up together to focus on things or also move things forward with your district coalition. But these activities at the bottom, these are some of the core things that neighborhood associations do. You help plan your neighborhood. So you may advocate for a stop sign or speed bumps or input on a development in your neighborhood. You may convene the community to hear about issues happening and to make decisions and bring decision makers to your meetings so that everybody is informed in your community. You come together sometimes to solve a problem, to advocate for the needs of the neighborhood, to bring folks together to host community events and partner with others that are doing community events. Often neighborhood associations form committees specifically focused on things, primarily like a land use committee or a transportation committee, or events or communications. And all neighborhood associations hold annual elections to elect their board of directors. Here are what district coalitions do and how we support neighborhood associations. Now, the caveat with this is there are 4 district coalitions that have evolved over the last 50 plus years, and we're not all exactly the same. We have different approaches to things, but generally, these are all the things that we do. So, district coalitions do the community small grants program, where anyone within the district, including neighborhood associations, can apply for small funds for big ideas on projects that you want to complete. We offer fiscal sponsorship for neighborhood associations that are not tax exempt. And with that comes the ability to do fundraising that you may not be able to do without a fiscal sponsor. We offer training and skill building, such as this webinar this evening. District coalitions also take stands on issues and advocate. That can be taking a position on something happening within one of the city's new committees or a vote of the city council. Also, committees. Southeast Uplift, for example, has a climate justice committee. We have a land use and transportation committees. Committees are a way that everyone within the district can come together under a community committee and make collective action together. Neighborhood associations receive communication funds from district coalitions to help you with your communication efforts. So that could be for a Zoom account or for a mail, an e-newsletter, or it could be for a postcard that you want to send to your members. That's up to you to decide. We also do capacity building. Sometimes that could be helping you do strategic planning. It could be helping you with writing a grant. There's lots of ways that district coalitions can support your neighborhood association. Every district coalition also is required to maintain an office in the district, and oftentimes those are used to host board meetings, to allow other organizations to come in, and neighborhood associations to come in and hold meetings. District coalitions also provide support for neighborhood association elections. That's sort of based on the needs of the neighborhood. We can be a neutral convener that is there to help count the votes and help support your elections according to what's in your bylaws. We also manage documents. So every neighborhood association is required to send their meeting minutes to their district coalition office, and the district coalitions maintain those records permanently. We also help to ensure that the city's pages for every neighborhood are updated with the contacts for your neighborhood, and that your most current bylaws are on the city's website. So there's some administrative work that we do in ensuring that if the public wants to find out about your neighborhood, or some of the decisions that you've been making and to have an archival of the neighborhood minutes, the district coalitions jump in and help with that. We also provide insurance for your activities so that you're protected under insurance for your events and meetings and so forth, and directors and officers are protected. And then we also reimburse for your state filing fees. So that basically means that, you're registered as a nonprofit. That has to be renewed every year with the Secretary of State's office. That's typically your board secretary's role, is to do that every year, and district coalitions will reimburse for those fees. You also have to file a form with the Oregon Department of Justice, which is around your fundraising, and those fees we also reimburse. So these are generally the things that all district coalitions do to support our neighborhood associations. So now we're going to unpack a little bit about some of the rules and some of the requirements of neighborhood associations. So we'll start at the state level. Any nonprofit in the state of Oregon has 3 core fiduciary responsibilities. These are required if you're on the board of any group, including your neighborhood association in Oregon. These rules apply to you. The first is called the duty of care. Means that you're showing up to the meeting, you're paying attention, you're staying engaged, you're really taking care of the organization. You are stewarding the organization. You have a duty of loyalty to the organization, and that simply means that you're putting the organization's needs above all others. You're there to help the organization succeed, not putting your own interests or the interests of another organization first and foremost. And as part of that, it means that you need to avoid any conflicts of interest, whether like for financial matters or conflicts of loyalty. And we can, if folks have questions about that, we have a handy guide at the end that we can walk through. And then and these sound a little bit authoritarian, the duty of obedience, and that just simply means obedience to the law. You, as a neighborhood association board member, are responsible to make sure that your neighborhood association is following the law. That means your mission, your bylaws, those ONI standards, and these rules put out by the state. So here we're going to unpack a little bit about the city's rules, the ONI standards, as we like to call them. These are the standards for neighborhood associations. And this defines who's a part of your neighborhood association. Well, it must be free. You cannot charge a fee for someone to participate. And generally, it's folks who live or own property or have a business in your neighborhood. And some neighborhoods go beyond that. Some neighborhoods define in their bylaws that that can include someone that works in the neighborhood or is adjacent to the neighborhood. That's really up, that's something you can decide in your bylaws, but you have to at least allow folks who live, own property, or have a business in the neighborhood. You must not discriminate. Everyone is welcome. And that ensures that you're complying with both state and federal anti-discrimination law. You must have a set of bylaws. Bylaws are the core rules of engagement for your neighborhood association. It defines how many people you have on your board of directors, generally how many times a year that you meet, what it takes to have quorum, which is the minimum number of people that you can have at a meeting that allows you to take a vote. If you have less than that, you can't. It defines like when you hold your elections and what the process is for how you do your elections. And it also spells out what you do if there's a grievance. And that is also part of the ONI standards. And then you have meeting requirements that are spelled out in the ONI standards. And that is that every neighborhood association for all of your board meetings and your general meetings, and some neighborhoods do them separately, some do them combined, you must give 7 days advance notice for those meetings. So that would be publishing them in your newsletter if you have one, posting them out on social media, putting them on your website, getting the word out 7 days in advance. So you should really have that agenda planned a week in advance and get that out. It must be open to the public. You cannot do work behind closed doors. And any decision that the neighborhood association makes, your board secretary must record all your decisions in your meeting minutes. And then grievances are something spelled out in the ONI standards, which basically has a formal process for resolving by violations of either your bylaws or the ONI standards. So those are the two things. If someone has a complaint, generally you want to try to work it out, but if it's a formal grievance, it must either violate the neighborhood association, must have either violated its bylaws or the ONI standards to be a formal grievance with the city. Here are some of the neighborhood association board member responsibilities. And you'll see how these are very connected to those legal duties that the state puts out. So you need to attend your neighborhood association meetings. You should be showing up at their events. You're really the ambassador. You're a real champion for the organization. Make sure that you know and follow your bylaws, uh, any policies that your neighborhood association has. Maybe you have financial policies. Maybe you have policies about how you onboard new members or how you recruit new members or how you do events or how you decide what you put your logo on or any number of things. So whatever your policies are, make sure that your board president is sharing those with you. And of course the law. So at the end of this, we'll share links to both the ONI standards and some other things where you can find more information. Another board member responsibility, every board meeting that you have, you should be reviewing the last meeting's board meeting minutes. And if there's any changes, that's when you would make them. You really should post them on your website so folks in the community know the decisions, the conversations and the decisions that are happening with the neighborhood association. And also your treasurer's role would be to provide regular financial reports so that you are really fulfilling that duty of care and really knowing how your organization is spending its money and the decisions that you're making. And then, of course, you want to just really make it a welcoming place for folks. You want to foster a sense of inclusion and participation. This is a space where you want to really welcome folks in and hear what it is that folks bring all sorts of questions, concerns, ideas to neighborhood associations, and it's your role to bring them in and find a place for them. And of course, to recruit board members. You always want to keep that pipeline of new folks coming in that want to get involved and want to get involved like you are at, by becoming a member. And I really just want to applaud each and every one of you for taking the step to be a board member, because, this is democracy at its most local level, and this is so needed right now, especially right now with what's happening with our city. And then, of course, you want to be involved and be a real ambassador for your neighborhood association, which basically means that, you're sharing information about what you do, and you are helping to get the good word out about the activities that you're doing and bringing folks along. Here are some specific roles within a neighborhood association board. It's the board officers, which is like an elevated level of responsibility. There's the board president, who typically sets the board meeting agenda. They typically facilitate the board meetings or the general meetings. They can call special meetings, and they generally respond to inquiries. Now, this may be slightly different if you have co-chairs or co-presidents, or a vice president or a vice chair. But generally, those are the responsibilities of the president. The secretary is your official note taker. That person maintains your board roster of everyone who's on your board. They ensure that that 7-day notice of your meetings is posted whatever outreach materials that you may be able to do that with. They manage the meeting sign-in sheet when folks come to your meeting. You always want folks to sign in. You'll want to capture that if you're doing hybrid meetings, all the people who are in attendance. If folks are coming in person, give them an opportunity to opt into your e-newsletter. It's a way to constantly build your list and keep folks plugged in. So they would manage that. They would take the minutes and then they would share them out and make sure that they're asking if there are any changes to that, to the minutes. And then they also, if you happen to make any changes to your bylaws, the secretary's role is to make sure that the city and the district coalition have a copy of those bylaws. And the district coalitions will make sure that those get posted on the neighborhood page that every neighborhood has. And we'll get to that towards the end of this training. And then there's the treasurer's role. Their role is to track your income and expenses. They should provide regular reports to the board. If you don't understand something, ask questions, right? You want to make sure that you're staying informed, engaged, ask those questions. I think especially with financial things, um, you just really, I would just say that if you're thinking of a question, chances are probably other people are too. So if you can be brave, be the one to say, I don't quite understand this. Can you explain it? And, treasurers are almost always more than happy to explain it. The treasurer oftentimes is the person who works with the district coalitions if they're fiscally sponsored by the district coalition. They also track your in-kind donations. So if a grocery store donates food and beverage to one of your events, your treasurer should be tracking that. And also, they would be the one typically to submit your annual state filings. And if you had questions about how to do that, your district coalitions can help you with the technical aspects of that. Continuing on in that, there's often, and this is a vital, important role that's very unique to neighborhood associations, is having a land use contact. This is really important, and it's very important that the state or the city's website lists who your land use contact is, because when the city has changes in land use to properties, they want to inform you of a development, they're going to be sending them to both the district coalition and your neighborhood association. And it's the land use contact that will actually get a copy of that. They will get that hard copy in the mail. So it's really important to stay on top of that with making sure that your land use contact is always up to date on the city's website. And your district coalition can help you make sure that any changes that you have to that contact are listed there. So they receive those land use notices from the city. They can respond to them on behalf of your neighborhood. Neighborhood associations have a privilege to be able to have free appeals of land use decisions. And then also, the land use contact typically maintains your neighborhood's land use committee. and they keep the neighborhood informed about things that are happening with development and land use in your neighborhood. And when the city is doing changes like the comprehensive plan, um, your land use contact will be especially involved in collaborating with the city and making sure that your neighborhood stays informed of opportunities to provide public input. And then there's the district coalition representative. Every neighborhood association is entitled to have someone from their neighborhood association elected by the neighborhood association to sit on their district coalition board. You don't have to, but if you do choose to, you should have a written process for that per the ONI standards. And then also, that role is a liaison role, right? They serve on the district coalition board of directors, they're serving on your board, and works as a liaison to bring what's happening at your neighborhood scale to the district coalition and vice versa. When there's things happening at the district coalition, also then shares that information back with your neighborhood association. So it's great to be, involved in both places. And then sometimes your bylaws may have specific other roles that you have within your neighborhood, and those can sometimes be a communications point person or uh, a vice president or some other roles. But again, it's your bylaws that will define those core standing roles within your neighborhood association. So open meetings. So neighborhood association meetings must be open and they must be accessible to the public. So again, the agendas must be published a week in advance. The meetings are open to the public, meaning that anybody can attend. You're making sure that you're doing your due diligence and informing people that it's happening. The locations are accessible, so you want to make sure that there's not stairs that would prevent a barrier to folks. You might want to ask folks if they have any needs. Maybe there's hearing or sight issues. You want to just really make sure that you're doing your best to provide an accessible location. Many neighborhood associations are doing their meetings hybrid so that you're using both Zoom and in person. This is also very important. Any decisions that you're going to make as a board, you have to hold that in an open meeting. If you're discussing something that you're going to vote on, you need to have that discussion in an open meeting. So that cannot be discussions about how you might vote on something as a board. You have to have that conversation about something you might vote on in an open meeting where the public can listen, participate, and be engaged. And that any decisions that your neighborhood does make need to be recorded in your meeting minutes. So that is, again, your official record of what happened at the meeting. And then here are some examples of decisions that require a vote. Approving your minutes, that should generally be a standing item on your agenda every time your board meets. Election of board members and officers, and that depends on your bylaws. Almost all neighborhood associations, it's the entire membership, folks within the community that can vote on your board members. And some neighborhood associations, they select the board officers, but read your bylaws, that will tell you how that works. Any amendments to your bylaws must be voted on by your board. If you're going to formally support something or endorse something, that should be a board decision. If you produce an annual budget, you have some money that you're going to spend, you should have a budget, and the board should approve both the budget for the year so that you know what your expenses are, so the treasurer has some guidance. And then if there's any projects that you're going to undertake, policies that you want to enact, events that you want to create, or committees that you want to start or continue, those are all decisions that should be collectively but decided by the board. And just a few cautions to share. Do not deliberate toward a vote outside of a public meeting. And I'll give an example of this. Say your board president sends a message out on email to the board and says, hey, here's what I have on the draft agenda. Does anybody have any other agenda items? And so says, oh yeah, we need to vote about endorsing this event. And then someone chimes in and says, well, I don't really support that, and here's why. you've just crossed the line. Like that's when you want to stop. You don't want to deliberate about what that vote is going to be. You just want to get the item on the agenda. That discussion, that deliberation must happen in an open meeting that the public can attend. There's also, and this is prohibited both in the ONI standards, this again, the city standards, and by state law, there's no proxy voting. So you cannot send somebody else to vote on your behalf. If you are the seated official board member, you're the one with the responsibility and accountability for your vote. So no one can go and vote on your behalf. And then this is very, very important, is never, ever support or oppose a candidate that's running for office. So neighborhood associations can support referendums or ballot initiatives. You can support ideas, but you cannot endorse people running for office. That's a very important thing. That could jeopardize your nonprofit status and would lead to not being recognized by the city, which would cut off resource for your neighborhood association. So as we head into elections, you can do candidate events where all the candidates are invited to them, but you cannot say that you support anyone over another person. Hold on. Okay, so here are some best practices for meetings and some tips. Allow social time and public comment time. Some neighborhood associations dedicate the first 10 minutes or so if folks want to bring forward an idea or a concern to the neighborhood, they bring that up. Having social time allows folks to just, connect with your neighbors. Where if you're doing your meetings in person, provide signage. Make sure that it's easy for folks to find where you are. Designate a greeter that will be there to welcome folks in, encourage them to sign in the sign-in sheet. Oh, and if you put your email, we'll keep you up to date on what we're doing, like our events coming up. Make sure you do introductions in the beginning of your meetings, unless it's a giant packed meeting. But if you have time, do introductions, and it really helps for folks to feel welcome and included. And it's a good practice generally to provide an overview of the things that you're going to talk about in the meeting, the agenda. Uh, Always a good recommendation to, if you have any ground rules, also known as community agreements, which is sort of the agreements that everybody has on how they're going to behave during the meeting. Good to read them or have them displayed somewhere, and allow some time for question and answer. And one thing I will say about ground rules is if your neighborhood is ever going to deal with a topic that is especially you anticipate will be controversial or people will have strong feelings, those ground rules are really critical tool to have to get everybody to agrees this is how we're going to behave in this meeting. We may have feelings about it, but we're going to be respectful. We're going to listen. We're going to take turns. Whatever your ground rules are, every neighborhood association really would benefit from having a set of rules that are co-created by your board if you don't already have them. And then make sure you time your agenda. There's nothing worse than having a meeting that just drones on and on. If you are setting a 1 hour time limit or a 2 hour time limit for it, have it timed out and stick to your agenda. And stay on time to respect folks' time. If you can, provide refreshments. And if folks are new and they come, figure out a way to follow up with them and engage them and bring them back in. So here are some next steps. Get to know your neighborhood association, get to know your district coalition, and above all, I mean, this work is really fun and just have fun, celebrate your successes, get to know your neighbors. What are neighbors needing right now? How can you provide care and support and a sense of community for folks? That's what folks look to their neighborhood association for. So here are some resources. We'll go ahead and put these in the chat before we move to the Q&A section. But there's a directory. I'm gonna jump into these a little bit. Here's the neighborhood directory on the city's website. You can go right in here and type in the neighborhood. Let's do just take a quick look here. So what's great about this is this shows you the boundaries of your neighborhood. It shows you sort of like the public works projects that are happening in your neighborhood. It shows the upcoming events. And this information here, this is really
We
important.
only see your PowerPoint. Are you showing
Oh,
us the website?
oh, uh,
You may have your share screen set to only show the PowerPoint.
thank you. Let me see if I can fix that. Um, okay, sorry about that. Thank you for interrupting. So this shows, ooh, this shows the geography of your neighborhood, upcoming events, your board meetings. It lists all the parks in your neighborhood. And here's the neighborhood association information. Here's where your bylaws are. Here's where this is lists your district coalition. This is where your website goes. And then it generally sends when your meetings are. So if you change your meeting schedule, really important to let your district coalition know so this can get updated when your general and your board meetings are, if you have questions, who to contact. And then there's the leadership of your neighborhood. All of these things are in here so that folks can reach out to you. And you'll see the land use committee chair is one. And this is where different city bureaus will go to make sure that you have all the updated things for land use in there. So there's also any public works project, construction, maintenance, etc. that are happening. This is really helpful. You can click on these and then send that out to your neighbors if you want to let them know, hey, the city's going to be coming through with, a sewer improvement project on these streets, and your road will be closed during this. This is where you can find a lot of that information. And then there's news and notices, land use proposals. This is just a treasure trove of information specifically about your neighborhood association. And so your role is to keep your neighborhood association contact info current on it. The second resource is the Office of Neighborhood Involvement Standards. Here's a quick look at the table of contents. It talks all about the boundaries, membership, non-discrimination bylaws, all the things that we talked about tonight. These are all explicitly listed in here to give you this is the meat on the bones to help you further understand the rules by which we're all operating. And that includes the benefits of recognition for neighborhood associations, things about communication, how to resolve disputes, and also the rules for district coalitions, as well as the City of Portland and business district associations. And then last not least is Code 3.96 within the city code, and this defines the purpose of this, basically summarizes the neighborhood program. It defines what they are, defines what neighborhood associations, district coalitions, business districts, and the City of Portland's responsibilities are to the neighborhood program. So I'm gonna stop there. Hold on. Okay, can you see my slide deck again?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, Q&A. So I'm gonna pop out of here, and if we Diane, do you know if there's any questions in the chat that we want to address that might need to go back to a slide for
You may
reference?
want to demonstrate. I believe the only question we do have is from Alex, who's asking, how are events added to a neighborhood's page on portland.gov?
That's a great question. So you can send that. Let me go back to that. At the very bottom of the web page, hold on, let me share this. Sorry, everybody. So if you find your neighborhood page and you scroll to the very bottom, see something we can improve on this page, give website feedback. You can click on that and it's going to open up a little form. This is something your neighborhood should decide who's going to do that, right? Like if you have an events committee or maybe that's your board president's role, just make sure that like you're coordinated in that, but you can do that here. You can select the type of feedback where you're adding more information, and then you would put the details here, your name and email, and it's just automatically going to tag it with the neighborhood there. That's one way to do it. Another way would be to ask your district coalition office if they could do it. So it's not likely that you'll end up with like flyers and logos and all that on, but just like a basic thing that could link to your website. So, Chris, I see your hand up.
Yes. My question is uh, more along the lines of, the neighborhood associations themselves are all run by volunteers. Okay. The neighborhood coalitions are run by they have a board of volunteers
Hmm.
and they also have some paid staff.
Right.
And the uh, the duties of each, I'd like to find out more
Hmm.
about the interactions that we should have together, the responsibilities of, say, uh, the board, which are all volunteers, and their responsibilities to the running of the coalition
Hmm.
and how involved they should be in the actual running of the coalition. And should they have, say a treasurer or a any board member really, what uh, how much they should stick their noses into the uh, the business side of that whole thing. I'm kind of we're kind of have a thing going at the at our coalition where things I'm not sure where things stand. And
Sure.
and so I'd like a whole class on that actually.
Yeah,
I like both sides of what's going on. And I just don't know what's happening. I don't know what people's responsibilities and things are. So I'm
got it. Well, here's so neighborhood associations are a volunteer-driven organization, right? Exclusively. There are some neighborhood associations that may have, like, I think there are a couple that have property and they run event spaces, and so therefore they have like someone that helps them with that. But generally, all neighborhood associations are volunteer-driven, right? And the kind of board that you have, it's called an operational board, meaning your volunteers on that board, you're running the organization, you're doing all the work that keeps the organization going. But if you are on a neighborhood association and you're serving in that role on your district coalition board, District coalitions, because they are professional organizations, they're nonprofits, they're also tax exempt nonprofits, meaning that not only like neighborhood associations are we registered as nonprofits with the state of Oregon, but we also have tax exempt status from the IRS. Our structure is the boards are a governance board. So there's, the board of a district coalition is a governance board. They're not doing the day-to-day work. They're not doing the work that the staff do because there's staff to do the work. So the district coalitions board hires and supervises the executive director and evaluates the executive director. And it's the executive director that once the board approves the budget, it's the executive director's role to oversee the management of the budget per the budget that was adopted by the board. So the board doesn't interfere with that piece. That's the executive director's role. That's the role of the staff to do that. And then, different district coalitions have different staff within them. They are doing the work of the district coalition. And so the board there is governance. The board is helping to approve policies. They are deciding some of the same things that neighborhoods do. If you're going to do an endorsement of an event, if you're going to create a policy, it's that board, it's that governance level. But the day-to-day stuff, the governance boards stay out of the day-to-day stuff because that's the role of the staff. And so for nonprofit best practices, in a governance board, which is most nonprofits that aren't kind of smaller scale or volunteer driven, their governance board. So did that answer your question? And Diane, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Kind of. So could the board ask for a more detailed like you said, the board gets a budget. Could they ask for a more detailed budget then? I mean, could we ask for more information, or I mean,
I
what is
think
it?
when
Is
it
you
comes to finances,
just
like you have
hire
the
somebody?
so the key officer roles that we went through that neighborhood associations have a president, a secretary, and a treasurer. District coalitions have those too, right? And so
Right.
typically in a district coalition, and I'll just say, here's how we do it at Southeast Uplift, is we have a finance committee. Our bookkeeper, myself, and members of the board, including our treasurer, sit on the finance committee.
Ah,
We together draft the budget. The finance committee makes a recommendation to the board on what the budget is, and then when we meet as a board, the finance committee walks the board through all the line items and what the budget is, and then the board votes to adopt it. And that happens in June every year at the end of each fiscal year for the following fiscal year. And so once the board approves the budget, then the staff have the guidance that they need to be able to go ahead and fulfill spending the resources according to the budget that was passed. If there are any change, like it depends on your finance policies. If there was something that needed to change, typically there's a threshold over which the staff would need to come back to the board and get permission for something like that. If it's over like 10% of your budget, it was like maybe a giant unexpected expense. But generally, the board, once you approve that budget, your role in the budget is done, except that the treasurer is going to always be doing report outs to the board on, like a monthly balance sheet and then quarterly profit and loss statement, and the rest of like the formal financial documents. And that's how the board stays involved. And that's where you want to just, if you don't understand something, please ask, because I know at least with our treasurer, we have someone that's a treasurer who's spent their whole world in banking, right? And is just like loves that, people ask questions because then everybody is brought along.
okay.
So, Angela, I see your hand up.
And I am the chair of the coalition that Chris attends. Chris, as a Coalition board member, you can request a look at the budget anytime, as detailed as you wish. All records are open to you. And the treasurer or anybody you want will go through them with you and explain the different line items.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Babs, I see your hand up.
Oh geez, sorry, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
I don't know what I'm doing here. Anyway, there. So I'm actually a member of the Northeast Coalition of Neighborhoods. I'm a recently elected parliamentarian, still kind of trying to wade through all my responsibilities. And can't tell you how grateful I am for this training. It's been extremely informative. Some of the links I knew about, others I didn't. The reason I raised my hand is because I also watched a video from 2023 when there was an attorney. His name was David Atkins.
Yes. Center for Nonprofit Law. Yep.
Yes. And I was totally immersed in everything he said, totally impressed, not only with his depth of experience, but his career of dedication to nonprofits. So at this point, I am one of some members of the Northeast Coalition that would like to hire him to help us wade through some of the issues. And even as you presented tonight, Nancy, I can see there's some issues that we need to define more clearly. And some of that has to do with state regulations, for example. So if you wouldn't mind just, and I can take this back to our next meeting. Our next meeting is pending. It hasn't been formalized yet. But in terms of how much his advice has helped you navigate through the different levels of federal, state, county, city regulations, and in terms of clarifying your bylaws, for example.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I will just say, you know, if you're not at the district coalition level and you're at the neighborhood level, ask your district coalition for any technical support that you may have about things. And if we aren't sure of the answer, he would be a go-to resource for us. David Atkin founded the Center for Nonprofit Law. It is a jewel based in Eugene that serves nonprofits from, you know, the Pacific Northwest and beyond. He's been at it for decades, and he really knows his stuff. And he helped guide us through a transformation in our bylaws. He helped us with understanding a core question that we had, which was, if I'm on my neighborhood association board and I'm on the district coalition, what hat do I wear if I'm voting at the district coalition? And the way that he answered that provided so much clarity. It was so helpful. He said, when you're on the board of a nonprofit, any nonprofit in Oregon, remember those three duties: duty of care, duty of loyalty, duty of obedience to the law.
Yes.
You wear those hats all the time. Like,
okay.
You don't take them off. You don't take one off and you put one on. You're wearing, if you're on the board of more than one or you're on 3 boards, you're wearing those hats at all the time. So you have those duties to those organizations at all the time. So if there's a circumstance where there's a conflict of loyalty between, well, I want to do this, would be good for this group, but maybe not for the other, then there's a process for that. You just abstain from the decision and the vote. It's pretty straightforward, but that really helped us to unpack some of the logistical nuances around that interplay between district coalitions and neighborhoods, neighborhood associations, and in the way that they serve as liaisons on the board.
Nancy, just in that minute or two, you helped clarify some of the very things that we are dealing with as we're trying to. The goal is to make our Northeast Coalition of Neighborhoods stronger and to increase our community involvement, to increase our commitment, all the things that you mentioned, increase our commitment to the 28 neighborhoods in our district. So thank you. Thank you
Yes.
very much.
You're welcome.
You
Do
bet.
you have any neighborhood association specific questions? Happy to jump back into district coalition stuff, but wondered if anyone has any other questions about the other stuff that we covered, or something that wasn't that we covered that you would like to know. Angela.
I thought on one of your earlier slides, it showed that the coalition could reimburse the neighborhood association for the $50 state Secretary of State filing. Did I read that right?
I know that that's the case with Southeast Uplift. I'm not sure. I presume that almost all the district coalitions do that. I'm not sure if that's the standard with District 2 coalition. But I would urge you all to explore that. There's 2 filings that have to happen every year for every neighborhood association. One is filing with the Secretary of State, and that's basically your business license. You're saying, we're a nonprofit, we're not an LLC, we're not this kind of a corporation, we're a nonprofit. And it's like $50 a year. It will take 5 minutes to fill it out. It's very easy to do. Don't be intimidated. And then there's a form that the Oregon Department of Justice, which is around your fundraising. So if you do any fundraise, sometimes maybe you don't have any, but you still need to fill out the form and submit that. And that is more of on a sliding scale. So if you're really cooking on the front burner and you've got lots of big grants and stuff, you may pay a little bit more, but it's not expensive either. But again, if you're not sure if your district coalition reimburses for that, check with them. And the district coalition would of course need a receipt for that in order to reimburse for that cost.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hi, Jessica. Yeah.
Thank you. As many others have said, thank you for all of the information tonight. This has been super helpful and informative. One of the things that you spoke about relating to the neighborhood associations particularly is, covered in the ONI standards and I think the foundational philosophy to some extent of forming the neighborhood program is for the neighborhood associations to advocate for our communities and the things that are happening within the city. I would love to hear your perspective, particularly given the climate in the city right now and what is happening, particularly with federal presence in the city and how some of that stuff, I think I get the general sense from some people within the neighborhoods that some of those things and taking stances on those things are considered political and feel like it steps into some of the things that I think are really ingrained in the neighborhood associations to not do and the line not to cross. And so would just love to hear your perspective on where you as a coalition leader, help guide neighborhoods between that line between political and advocacy and that sort of work and how we might navigate that as a neighborhood association board.
That's such a great question for these times. And again, it comes back to this is democracy at its most local level, right? So you've got an elected board and it's the decisions of your board. The one line that you don't cross is that you cannot endorse or oppose a candidate for office, but you can take a stand on a policy. That is up to you. You can take a stand on a policy. You can take a stand on a ballot initiative. Again, it's those ideas. That's what democracy is all about. It's the civic discourse about the ideas, about the environment that we live in and what's happening. So that's a conversation that your board can have. You may want to have, put things on the agenda. I will say that at Southeast Uplift, at our next board meeting, we're going to devote an hour, not just with the district coalition, but we're going to be inviting the presidents of all of our 19 neighborhoods to come, and we're going to have a discussion about what community safety and community care means in a time like this. Because, at the end of the day, we're neighbors. We're all neighbors. And what are we doing to support folks when we have, the big D democracy is really under threat? And so we're seeing the need as like the beauty of having a coalition is that it's the voices are amplified, right? There's connection and idea and like generation. Like, what could a district coalition, a whole district response to community safety look like? What are those issues? What could a district coalition response be to community care? We know that our food banks are bare, and the lack of federal funding is going to really impact community health. It's going to impact food, for particularly for children. What is the neighborhood response to that, and what's the district response, and how can we all work together to try to make an impact and make things better for folks? So I say go for it, have those discussions. If you need support, you want sort of a neutral convener to help with facilitating what could be a hard conversation, or you're not sure if you're following the rules, like ask your district coalition for help. We oftentimes will come and help, we can help facilitate difficult conversations.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Angela.
In our neighborhood association, a couple of years back, we had some of our neighbors who were running for city council in the early thing. And I know the ideal is to have a candidate forum, but we couldn't do that. And one after another, different people stood up and said, "Hi, I'm your neighbor. I'm running for this, and I just wanted you to know that." And did we break any rule or regulation in letting them do that? Because we didn't, it wasn't a campaign speech. It was just them identifying themselves as a neighbor and a candidate.
The way I would approach that is to a district coalition, and like a district coalition, consider what is our role in this. Southeast Uplift, we held numerous events where we had the candidates come. We had a candidate forum on housing and houselessness. We had an open house where it was a meet and greet event. And so like at the district coalition level, it may make sense for folks to invite all the candidates in. But I would say if you're doing it at a neighborhood level, is just give equal time, right? It's the same thing. Like media needs to make sure they're not privileging one candidate over another with a certain amount of time. So like if someone asks to come before your board, or they just show up at a neighborhood association meeting, you want to make sure that the other candidates are getting that airtime too. And so I would say proactively, I would schedule something that they all come to, or that they're all invited to. Whether they come or not is up to them, but as long as you've equally invited all of them, nobody can say that you're not playing fair, right? You wouldn't want that accusation.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have one more question, if I
Sure.
may. How are the nonprofits, like, how did Southeast Uplift come to be the nonprofit in District 3? Like, I'm just curious. I'm newer to this whole system, and so like, how does that work?
Yeah. So, well, Southeast Uplift formed back in 1968, actually. It was when neighborhoods all along Powell Boulevard were up in arms and rallying to stop the Mount Hood Freeway, which would have gone from the Markham Bridge all the way out to Mount Hood, and it would have put a 6-lane freeway through Southeast Portland. Those neighborhoods got together, they fought that, and it was that, and then the other things at the beginning of this training I said like that were happening in the city, where then city council sort of decided we need to have a way for Portlanders to play an active and more formal role in the decision making of the city leaders. And so at the time, Southeast Uplift was active and organized. The neighborhoods that were involved are like way different than they are today. It was like Happy Valley and parts of what is now East Portland, and like our boundaries were very different. But we've been the district coalition since it started in 1974. And, as a nonprofit, we had that sort of community organizing infrastructure. And then, yeah. And so we've been at it for over 50 years.
So it was more of like a grassroots coalition that came together and sort of formalized as a nonprofit, as opposed to like a nonprofit that existed and came in to like organize the neighborhoods, like that
Yeah.
sort of internal versus
The issues that Southeast Uplift was addressing at that time were like the heart and soul of what the neighborhood program is, like land use policy. This involved like not just the state, like the city and the state with the freeway and stuff. And they did end up stopping the Mount Hood Freeway. And it's so like, I mean, the city leaders at the time sort of recognized the importance of that role, and that became a model that other cities have then since adopted. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Nancy,
I'm
we
seeing we're a little bit over time.
oh, this was scheduled until 7:30, but we have a question
right.
from Alex.
Okay,
Alex
sure.
asks, can you share some anecdotes to illustrate some best practices for a land use committee? In essence, how it engages and educates / advocates for neighborhood residents?
Sure. So, typically there would be the land use committee is oftentimes for many neighborhood associations a standing committee, which means you always have that's a committee that doesn't come and go. It's one that you always have, right? And that means that you have someone that's running that committee. They would be your land use chair. And ideally you would want to, if you can, get someone who's either willing to learn about the city's land use policies and how land use decisions are made. Some organizations also combine land use and transportation because they're really related. Southeast Uplifts combines our land use and transportation, but that chair would both be someone that's knowledgeable about the land use notices that you will get from the city. They will get those notices, they will read them, they will, discuss them with the land use committee. And if there's a decision that the land use committee would like we should really take a stand on this particular issue, then they would make a recommendation to the neighborhood association's board, educate them on what the core issue is, and then the neighborhood association's board can make that decision. So typically a land use committee or a transportation committee are not just off separately doing stuff. They are making position, policy, public comment type, like official business, bringing that to the board to decide. And then once the board does that, the land use chair will, maybe like present a draft letter of a public comment on behalf of the neighborhood association. So you've got folks that are kind of specialized in learning about those things. And talk to your district coalition if you have folks at the district coalition that know that, and they can help to bring you on board. I know that some of the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability has several different land use presentations that they've been polishing over the last few years, and I hear that they're about ready to start offering them. Those would be really key for folks to go to, and maybe have your land use committee chair come and like share the key learnings with the board, so the board is getting a better sense. In terms of an example, maybe it's a particular development that's planned in your neighborhood, or if it's combined with like the transportation committee, maybe it's a high crash situation where a crosswalk is not easily marked, or it's dark, or a stop sign is needed. Those sort of things. These are the sort of things that like a land use and transportation committee will undertake. Did that answer your question? Great. Babs.
Hi again. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Along the line of what you're just talking about, I just want to share finally some good news. And many of you probably already know that the Oregon State Legislature today, just this afternoon, somewhere around 1 o'clock, passed the modified, quote unquote, transportation bill. And as you know, then Senator Con Pham, who actually represents a big portion of District 3, correct?
Yes.
I'm in Northeast Portland, so but I'm in touch with her office on a regular basis, and this was a huge victory. And anything, Nancy, you want to share about that? Others may already know this. It was just finally a day to acknowledge the work not only of our legislators, but there was incredible, as you know, public pressure about
Yeah.
this. I submitted testimony previously, a written testimony. So, and again, that link between land use and transportation, honestly, those two things, in my humble opinion, cannot be separated.
Yeah.
They work hand in hand. Thank you, dear.
Yeah, it's great that they have done that. Now, here's what in terms of like best practices and meetings is like, this is something that, if land use and transportations are a hot topic in your neighborhood, invite an elected official that knows about these things to come to one of your meetings and share it with the public. That will draw people into your meetings to learn along with you. And like, it's that like shared learning where you can start to, figure out, well, what's next for our neighborhood and how does this connect? So district coalitions often do that. But like with our land use and transportation committee, we are always having different agency personnel from the city of Portland, from Metro, it depends on what it is. Sometimes even the state come and just help unpack so that folks know where they can have input and influence, and where there's an opportunity for public comment that they can then bring back to their neighborhood. So if your district coalition has an active land use and transportation committee, make sure you've got someone from your neighborhood that's participating in that and is bringing that information back to your neighborhood. Any others? Don't be shy. Well, why don't I do this? I'm gonna go back to the slide deck. I had a couple of slides that they're actually infographics that I designed along with the Center for Nonprofit Law about conflict of interest and conflict of loyalty and what to do if you think you have a conflict. And it's just simple steps on how you do that. These will be part of the slide deck, but we can talk through them, and then if you have questions, we can answer them. We've got about 15 minutes left, so do that. Okay, so one sec. Okay, so conflicts of interest. As a neighborhood association director, you may face a conflict of interest situation when a decision or an action of your neighborhood association would likely to have a financial impact either on you or related parties like your family, a business interest, partners, someone that's close to you. And those must be handled in a manner that allows the whole board to comply and you to comply with your duty of loyalty. Again, we're going back to those state rules. This is part of the duty of care. This is part of the duty of it's actually all of them because it's also the law, right? So if you think you have a conflict of interest, so say your neighborhood association builds a pocket park and you decide, oh, we really need someone that's gonna mow the grass once a month, and you're looking at like, well, who do we hire to do that? If you're a board member and you or your family or a close associate or someone that's close to you has a company who does that and is being considered by the board, you have a conflict of interest. So what you would say is, and it's always better to err on the safe side and say, I have a conflict, or I think I might have a conflict. So first is to declare it. I have a conflict of interest, or I think I might have a conflict of interest. The second thing would be to describe the nature of it. My partner runs a landscaping business and is being considered for this position. then you would refrain from the discussion. So you would actually not participate in that discussion. You would also not participate in the vote on that matter, right? Because you would have a conflict of interest. And actually, it's best practice if you actually leave the room. So like you are in no way influencing the decision. So now, just because you have a conflict doesn't mean that the board has to say no to it. The important thing here is transparency, that you're putting it out there. So if the board says, well, we've got these 3 bids and this one really is the best. We know them, we work great with them, their bid is the most cost effective, and for this reason, that reason, and all these reasons, they're the best choice. The board can vote to do that, but by declaring that you have a conflict of interest and you're not participating that's a decision that the board has made and you're not participating in it. So you're not violating your legal duties as a board member because you've completely opted out of that entire decision and discussion. Then the second thing is conflicts of loyalty. Again, your position is to make sure that you're holding the best interests of the organization that you're serving on at all times, right? And so if you're facing a divided loyalty where you feel like you cannot deliberate and vote on something in the best interest of that organization because you may also have a duty of loyalty to a different organization, then you declare it. I think I have a conflict of loyalty. Explain what it is. Refrain, again, very similar to conflict of interest, refrain from influencing the vote during the deliberations and abstain from voting on it, right? So like basically you just opt out of it. Now it's very interesting. The state of Oregon says that if the vote that your board is taking has to have a certain number of votes, like whatever the quorum is. So maybe it's something that your neighborhood association says, this isn't just a majority vote, this is a super majority vote, like 2/3 of your vote, whatever that is. If you're declaring a conflict of loyalty, your abstaining from that decision does not automatically count as a no, which basically, if you're counting up all the votes in a typical vote and somebody abstains, it's not counting toward the vote. If you had a situation where you needed to count the yes votes, and that was the most important thing, you needed to get a certain number of yes votes. If someone abstains for a conflict of loyalty, their vote is not included in that head count. And it allows that is to incentivize people to be really honest when you may have a conflict of loyalty, is that you know you can do the right thing and you're not going to compromise the vote in either way. Your abstention for a conflict of loyalty does not in any way change the vote. So it really encourages people to be really honest about that. So I'm gonna jump back out here and see if there's any questions on that. And I know there are different, if you're ever really curious about this, I would encourage like go to Google and, ask it for like examples of like, this is like what a conflict of interest might be, like some specific examples. Certainly, a district coalition can help you with some guidance if you weren't sure. But there's lots of training and there's lots of information out there that can give you kind of like case study, like where you can be challenged, like as a board, oh, here's this scenario. Is that a conflict or not? And those are things that are really helpful for the board to really kind of stretch those muscles. And those are easily found online.
Raise hand. Raise hand.
Hi, Peggy.
Hi, I couldn't get my video to work. It feels weird not having my video. Anyway, okay, let's see. For people that don't know me, I'm from Arbor Lodge and I'm a member at large there and a rep for NACN. Okay, now I got to remember what the question I was going to ask. Oh my God. Oh, geez, Louise. Okay. Oh, I forgot.
Was it about conflict of interest or conflict of
Yeah. Oh, yeah, but I can't remember what it was a nuance of it, sort of. Oh, I'm sorry. I'll remember it someday and I'll email you for the next.
Okay. Sure.
But
maybe someone else will chime in with questions.
yeah,
and
maybe, yeah, and either somebody that's either Angela or Chris or Babs might be thinking it. Anyway, I like to tell people that I'm new at my position, you know, being doing all of this, and it's just been a really wonderful learning experience. But it's a lot of work too. So when you volunteer, it's a big responsibility. And when my family asks me, "Well, what are you doing? What are you busy?" I said, "I'm doing my civic duty," and especially now more than ever, I think this is what's so important. Community is everything, and so. I, like you said, you know, you're just grateful for all these wonderful volunteers, and you know, we have to band together and yeah, do good things. And thank you for the presentation tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, on the Southeast Uplift uh, website, we have resources for our neighborhoods, and I don't know if other district coalitions do this, but when we typically do go to our neighborhood association elections, and that's where we introduce ourselves, and so that helps for other members and maybe new people coming on to the board of a neighborhood association to get a sense of like understanding what this ecosystem is of the neighborhood association and how the district coalition function and can be supportive to them. But we also provide we have handbooks for a new neighborhood association board member, a handbook for a new treasurer, or um, a new secretary or board president that sort of just outlines those general guidelines that we went through earlier in the presentation. And, you know, those are things that if other district coalitions don't have them, we invite you, you know, borrow from us and shape it how you need it. But it just kind of covers the basics.
Yes, and NECN has been great. I mean, even though we're just really still, I say, forming, storming, and norming, but we have a wonderful operations coordinator, which I had to look up the meaning and never heard of it. But Lydia, and they have provided all that learning. Lots to read.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, it's all good.
And I think you know, at the end of the day, have fun, right? Like that's what's so important. And there's, you know, we've seen neighborhood associations that have dissolved. We've seen like amazing comebacks, particularly over COVID, how, you know, things went really awry with the ability for folks to come together. And so, you know, there have been just amazing success stories where district coalitions help reconstitute neighborhoods that need help, and just really, you know, this is such an important time for our city and the ecosystem that we're in. There's a real opportunity for us all to really help take care of our neighbors.
Yep.
Chris.
A question, maybe that she was trying to ask, maybe not. As far as interest stuff, can you advocate for someone? You just can't vote. If you can you like you know, they want I don't know what they'd want, but tree trimming or something. And you had, you know, a family that does that, you could say, well, I don't want to vote on this, but these people are great or whatever, you know, and you can advocate for someone, you just can't necessarily vote.
Yeah, I mean, some like your board president may say, hey, we're gonna, you know, we're gonna hire, so if anybody has any suggestions, you can say, well, you know, in full transparency, this is my cousin's business, but they do great work and happy to provide, you know, any recommendations or whatever. And then they should just go through the same process as all. But then if that was your nephew, you would say, I have a conflict of interest and I'm not going to participate in the decision making of the board, but you could make a recommendation. Yeah. With the caveat, right? Yeah, right. We have 4 minutes left. Any other questions? Okay, well, Peggy, if you think of what your question is, feel free to email it. I'm going to put my email in the chat. It'll take us a few days, but we will get the recording from this up on our YouTube channel. We encourage you to poke around. There's dozens of trainings that are on there on any number of things, including facilitation, including different practices, all sorts of stuff. So encourage you to poke around on our YouTube channel, and we'll also make sure that all the folks that signed up for this also get the slide deck. So you may get that separately because I can send that out right away to make sure you've got all of those links and the slides. But yeah, if you have any questions, reach out to your district coalition and feel free to reach out to us as well. Thank you all
very
for being
much.
here tonight, and thanks so much for the work that you're doing. It's so important, especially now.
Thank you.
Thanks, and